So welcome everybody. My name is Jocelyn Scudder. I'm the Executive Director for the Arts Council, Park City, Summit County. And we're thrilled to have you here at our Arts and Culture Leadership Roundtable. These meetings kind of started during COVID. Many of you remember we were going over resources and just, I don't know, got together as a collective to share some of the industry pain points that we were going through. And so this is a continuation of that group. When we have relevant topics to chat about, we will. And I invite leaders in the arts and culture industry here in Summit County to gather and chat. And so I do want to go over some housekeeping before we get started. I see some of you are on camera. I love it. I love to see your faces. Please feel free to stay on camera if you would like to. It is not required to be on camera either. This is an informational session. This session is being recorded. So we will have this webinar to be able to share out with your staff. If you're like, oh, wow, I really wish this one person could have come. We'll have this information so that we can share it out. If you need closed captioning, that is at the bottom of your screen. You can see down where it says live transcript, and you can turn that on and off if you would like to. And so our goal today is really, again, this is an informational session. The Arts Council is really, really thrilled to have entered into partnership with Americans for the Arts and also our state partner, Utah Arts and Museums, to enter into a massive study, Arts and Economic Prosperity. And I'm thrilled to be joined here with Dr. Genna Styles-Lyas, who is with Americans for the Arts. And she is going to run the lion's share of this meeting, and I'm grateful for that because she is the expert and our liaison for this process that's going to be taking place basically starting now throughout the next year. So it's a 12-month process. The result is a really amazing economic impact study and report that we're going to be able to own as Summit County arts and culture practitioners, and to be able to share out to investors and government leaders in hopes that we can continue to talk about really how our quality of life is not only benefited from arts and culture, but also our economy. It's kindling for our economy, and we need to continue to shout that from the rooftops at all times. So without further ado, I think I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Genna Styles-Lyas, and she's going to share some slides with us. We will reserve some time at the end for questions, and I'm sure many of you will have some. I do want to reinforce the idea that we, the Arts Council, are leading this process. We are looking for support from you. So I hope that none of you feel overwhelmed by this, but I am looking to, I might need to lean on you for questions, going to you for certain events, doing surveys at your facilities. So that'll be my call to action at the end. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it on my end. So I'll pass it over to you, Genna.
Oh, well, hello, friends. I'm so excited to be here. I'm usually joining from Baltimore, Maryland, which is close to where I live on the unceded territory of the Piscataway, Lumbee, and Cherokee tribes. But now I'm in Pittsburgh for some reason, and I need to make sure that I acknowledge the lands that I am sitting in at this current moment. So anyways, I'm so excited to be here. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm an autumn. I love things that are yummy. And so just to get to know me a little bit, I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to learn more about the folks in Utah. I did this presentation a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was only a week ago. Time is relative when we are in a pandemic. And I really want to continue to use it to talk through for us today. It's simple. It's a slightly different audience that we used it for. So I'll try to go quickly through the things that you don't need to know, and sort of hold space for the things that could be really useful to you to know more about. So yeah, I'm just gonna share the screen. Sorry, my energy is so excited, and I just have to calm down because I'm like, yeah, yes, Heather. Okay, I love that. Okay, good. I'm not the only one who's super excited. I need to just breathe through it though. All right, so let's go through these slides. This is the Audience Intercept survey webinar. So this is 2 parts, and I'll get into what that means. So this one was focused on the survey piecing for the audience. So I'm part of a team of researchers in DC at Americans for the Arts. Randy is the VP of Research. Then we have our Ben, Senior Director of Research. And then there's me, Director of Equity, Director of AEP6 Equity and Community Engagement. So we'll talk through a little bit of some of the things that happened with this survey. And then I wanted to welcome the whole 387 partners that are being a part of this survey as well. There are 387 communities that we are in currently. So all 50 states and DC. So it's a massive undertaking. It's a national level of support. And it's just really cool. It's a great, cool tool at the end of the day. Some thoughtful considerations. I can't give you room agreements because I didn't give you this to kind of agree to. So I'm just going to keep in mind that perfection is not real. That's my favorite one. That's why it's first. It's not real. And it'll be okay. If you have questions, please embrace the chat. I am very quick to the chat. I'm actually going to open it right now so that I don't miss anything as I'm trying to, you know, a Zoom screen, you got to move this over here and this over here. Time is a gift. We're going to do this as a process, and hopefully that thoughtful process and intentional process will make us have a successful outcome. And you all are a team with Jocelyn for sure. She is the person who we are reaching out to for support, and she's going to be reaching out to you all for support. So we're all in this together as we go through this very big process that's going to be awesome. Great. The agenda is here. We're going to go through it with goals, engagement and equity. What does the audience intercept mean, and sort of questions. So I'm going to drop in the chat the one pager. This one pager is where you'll find a lot of information that's quick and easy to read. I hope that everybody sees that in the chat, right? Thumbs up if you can. Awesome. So that's just a quick one pager of sort of what I'm about to talk about. But basically this started 25 years ago, this idea of arts means business. And it was really to drive home the value of arts to folks who don't know the value of arts or who don't support the value of arts in so many different ways and spaces. So a lot of government officials and advocacy folks and change makers in the arts got behind this tool and started to kind of draft this economic impact survey. Each year it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know, we look at things of spending wise, like in your region, who is spending and how much. So we'll be able to say, what's your tourism dollar? What's your residential spending? And I think even this year, it'll be like, how many times does it circulate the community before it goes out? So it's a deep dive in spending, which is like major, especially if for government officials who are like, wait, what does my dollars do? That's why we lean into nonprofits, because usually they are about, their financials are almost public because they're mostly funded from government and private philanthropy. So this is helping folks know where your dollar goes. Generally, folks spend, I think, about $48 on average, and that doesn't include the cost of admission. And that was in 2019. So again, things are going to be different. Probably dollars are going to look and feel different, which is a good thing. There's two components to this process. There's the audience intercept survey and the organizational survey. And again, as a team, these two things come together and they need each other. And we need you all to be a part of it because you all are either surveying the audience members or Jocelyn's going to ask you to complete a survey. So those are the two parts. At the end of this process, you all will receive a customized report that outlines what I just said, all of the spending in your region, and it will also have sort of where you stand comparable to different cities nationwide when it comes to your economic impact. And it will also have the ability to have a calculator that if your organization wasn't represented in the study, or if you didn't get, usually when we get the study, you get the big Utah numbers, the big whole Summit County. But if you wanted to narrow it down and make it just about your organization for grant writing purposes, that's what you can use. So then you have all of that data to support what's happening in your actual organization, which is critical. It's been really, really critical. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the survey process. And then here's a good timeline. I see your question, Betsy. I'll be with you in a second. The timeline is right now we're sort of just game planning. We're going to have an awareness and communication strategy that I'll show you at the end. That's just some sort of marketing support, to Jocelyn's point, to get the word out. And then the audience intercept survey that happens from May 1 until the end of April of 2023. And we'll be able to provide Jocelyn with reports. So she'll be able to help you understand how we're doing as a community, right? And then in October, Jocelyn will provide to AFTA a list of eligible organizations. And I'll tell you what that means in October, so that in January, we'll give you all a survey. By the end of September 2023, all the results will be yours. And then you will go off and be great. I forgot a story here. I'm going to go back really quick. I want to just tell a story about the why of this process. In Oregon, some people might be like, what is in it for me? And why should I be here? Oregon, 2 years ago, or 2 surveys ago, so AEP4, they started with just 3 local partners in Oregon. And now they're one of our largest group of partners that are participating. They're at 31 different partners in Oregon that are participating in this study, because word got out and people were like, oh my gosh, this is so brilliant. This is the way that we can tell the story of what we're doing. This is how we've gotten so much relief money. This is how we've done the work that we've been able to do. So it's a really, really, really game-changing process. It's a lift, right? I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not easy. It is a lift, but it definitely is worth it. So I just wanted to make sure I said that out loud. This one is a little bit different than the ones in the past. We're really centering equity in a way that's intentional through a framework of sorts. Why? Because in 25 years, folks have been underrepresented. And so we want to bring some, namely BIPOC, so Black and Indigenous people of color, or African, Latinx, Asian, African, Arab, Native American. We want to bring folks to the forefront that have been marginalized in the past. And how we're doing that through an equity framework, through some transparency, through community engagement, like we're doing right now. I mean, I've been on the phone with so many people. I've called 170 different partners out of the 387, because I'm making a commitment to do so, to kind of have that, I don't like the word trickle down, but to have that approach that, like, you can, an activation point for you to be like, oh, we should be partnering. We should be in community together. So that's how we're sort of doing that work. And you'll see that throughout the study a little bit as well. I want to pause here just to give because actually I want to read what Betsy said. Oh yes, okay. So you have some experience with these economic impact surveys.
Oh yeah, they're really. I can't tell you how important they are for our business, and we really started doing an Ernst back in 2017, and everything you said is absolutely correct. And then when we started to talk with legislators, and really talked about how we track numbers, and we do it by sensors, and we really track people, because our festival is so porous. You basically could come in a bazillion different ways. It changed the dialogue immediately, and it's so imperative that this gets done. It's the only thing that registers for legislators either is, what are you doing for my group, or how much money are you bringing to the state? And there you have it. So I'm so excited about this topic.
Yes, Betsy, I love that. I love that affirmation, because it is real. And yes, that is what it's for, right? So we're going to talk through some of the things that help us do this process and sort of get to know, what does it mean, right? You just told me it's 2 parts, but what are those parts and what does it mean for me? And we've sort of already come up against a few questions that have been helpful to sort of talk through before they get to head. It's not going to take 25 minutes, because I'm going to speed through this, because I want to make sure that we have some time for questioning after. So there's a lot of different tips for surveys. I had this slide in there because there's a lot of different ways to survey people, and we got so many different terms that we use that it's like, what's the other acronym? What's the thing that we're supposed to, like, it's too much. So I'm hoping to break it down here and get you more excited than overwhelmed. There's 3 different formats that we're going to be doing this time. We have a paper survey, and these are for the audience members. We have a QR code that we're asking folks for, and then we have a URL survey. That's something that can go on a tablet. So that hopefully is like, whew, we got something digital this time. It's not about the papers. I'm telling you, it's too much with these papers. But every sort of different way of doing the survey process reaps different has really great positives and has some things that might be challenging for you, depending. And we ask that no more than 50 surveys per event, right? So if you're having an event and there are 150 people, make sure that we're only collecting from 50. The reason behind that is that we don't want to skew the data. We don't want to go to the big house and fill our survey bucket with all of those surveys when we have a smaller organization that's here for it and that's doing the work and that should be getting equal notification. So 50 surveys per event. There's no minimum though. So if it's a smaller event and there's only 3 surveys that you collect, go ahead and send them to Jocelyn. Still send them over. We want every little bit. And 1 survey per travel party. So if you're going, if you have a person who's on a date with another person, we want to have 1 person fill that survey out. We don't need 2. So those are sort of the tricks and tips, or I'm sorry, the expectations for survey collecting and the 3 different modes. I'm going to break down the modes really quickly. The paper surveys coming in, I believe we're at 20 languages right now. So that's the best one for accessibility. If you have, to name these, I think we have Russian, we have, oh my gosh, I had these in my mind and now they're all Spanish. I think there's Mandarin, there's a lot. Punjabi, there's a lot of different languages that we're doing here. And the paper survey is a front and back kind of situation. I think there's 13 questions total, and they just require folks called interviewers. And I'll talk to you about that in just a second. So the paper survey is pretty straightforward. QR codes and URL surveys are new for us this time. This is an actual link. If you're curious of how to use a QR code, you don't know how to do it, you can pull your phone up right now and use this methodology. This is actually a sample survey from Montgomery County, Maryland. What you do is you would pull up your phone, like a picture, like the camera, pull it to the screen, and a link will pop up that you can actually touch and the survey will come up. So it's very easy. It's something that you can post somewhere. So it's really low tech, low boots on the ground, for lack of a better phrase, just really easy to collect surveys this go around. I think that was probably the most popular one when we had our larger webinar, was the QR codes. We also have URL surveys that would be a tablet version of the same process as the QR codes, except for it would be passed around and it would have to be provided by the organization. So here's some supports that we offer or we suggest when you're doing survey collection. We do have I hate this word, quota. We do have a goal that Jocelyn and the Arts Commission has a goal that they've signed on behalf of your county to provide to AFTA. This goal is going to sound massive to you all, so I'm not even going to say it out loud. But here's how we get to this goal, and we do it as a team. We target the annual event. So you all sit down with Jocelyn like you're doing right now and saying like, oh, Jocelyn, you got to get this event. We got to get this event on the calendar. We got to get this one. We got to get this one. And we chunk it out so that, like, for instance, if you go to, let's say for example's sake, your survey goal was 800 surveys for Utah, right? That means that you're going to collect 50 surveys from 32 events. So that means that you only have to schedule 32 events and you got your survey goal right there, right? Or 16 and 25, the ratios. That's how you do it. So collecting those surveys and those seems more manageable when you plan it out that way. And then some folks do incentives. This is not necessary. Most folks have done this process successfully without, but it's a cost where you give something to an audience member or patron or an attendee as a gift for completing the survey. Generally, they're small, like stickers, golf pencils, pens, stuff like that. But again, they're not necessary. And then the key, these folks are the key, the interviewers. So I said I'd talk about them later. The paper survey needs an interviewer. That means that it needs a buddy to help tell the story of the survey to the people who are being surveyed. Their interviewers can come from many places. Jocelyn is one person. I don't think she should be at every event. If she's at 32 events this year, collecting all of those surveys, that is not what we're asking for and not what we're hoping for. We hope that you all can be empowered through this, through Jocelyn, with the knowledge, expertise, and passion to do this process and to help support this part of the process, especially or in addition to the others. Interviewers come from Jocelyn's staff. They could be staff or volunteers. They could also come from your organization as staff or volunteers. They could also be students. You can find some folks in the university. And what happens is that sometimes when it comes to volunteers, you offer them something like, for instance, students. I know like at my school, when I had to do some things, I was like, can I see the show? That's payment right there. So like, you know, providing them options when it comes to volunteer that would sort of reimburse their time or gift them for helping support this process. It doesn't have to be, but it is something that's nice to do. And then lastly, when we talk about our interviewers, especially with that BIPOC, with that centering equity, we want to think about representation. So if you think that you're the best person to do this interviewer, or you think that there's somebody else that maybe perhaps more aligns with the community that you're going to go see, get them to empower them to support you and trying to make sure that you are representing that community and making folks feel comfortable there. Last thing here is that there's two different kinds. So there's the traditional one that needs that interviewer that I just talked about, best for outdoor events or large scale events. And then there's the pre-event where you can lay, you know, a survey down at every 10th seat and, you know, have a curtain speech at the beginning or a big announcement at the beginning, have somebody really passionate talk about that, and then, you know, have folks fill it out on their own, or having like the QR code up. Very much just like low maintenance, low staff capacity kind of situation. These questions have come up, like if you have folks that come to the same things or some of the same events, or you don't have the staff capacity to do this, never fear. That's what we're leaning into in this round. So if you have folks that come to the same events and they're like the audience people and they're like, look, I filled the survey out already, I don't want to come to this. Making sure that the interviewers or the person who does the curtain speech really speaks from the heart and shares the importance and the power of this tool and how much it can change the game in a positive way for your community in arts and culture, and bring these events that are happening that they're attending right now back. And that like different events can spend different money. Like if you're going to the ballet, and this week it's at, you know, let's say it's at a big old, you know, a venue where there's a ballet this week, and then the next week it's an actual like like a zoo or circus or some like youth event, a children's event. You're going to spend differently. I know my husband and I, we going to spend differently at the ballet than at a child's event. Okay. So making sure that we remind folks that like, yeah, totally. I know you already did it, but I'm pretty sure you might have spent differently. So I'd love to kind of get your information. Small but mighty staff, let's lean into those digital options. Let's really lean into those digital options and lean into support. So for our partners, the local partners, the research partners like Jocelyn and all 387 folks that I talked to last week, we talked about empowering you all, and you all now can empower your folks. So that means your staff, your volunteers, to help you in this process, to make really powerful opening statements and to help support that staff capacity so that you all, so I don't want Jocelyn at every 32 events, and I don't want you all throughout the whole weekend to be on the ground for every single moment of this process either. So it's about sharing the load of it that helps. Let me just make sure I get through this. Eligible organizations are listed. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of different ways that we can participate. It doesn't always have to be a person with a 501c3 is sort of the main thrust of the slide. There's a lot of different organizations. So if you see something here that you're like, oh, I know a really good organization, but I did not know that they were a part of this, like they could be a part of this and could help tell the story of Summit County, reach out to them, talk to Jocelyn, say, oh my gosh, they need to be here. Because that's what we're looking for this time as well with AEP6. We want to widen the sort of like gate here and making sure that we keep everybody included so that we make this sort of tapestry of things, so that when we look at Summit County, we can see all of the art, all of the cool stuff, the little teeny tiny yellow pieces and the red pieces and the pieces that look like birds. We want to make sure that we see all of that. And this was just a wonderful quote from one of our partners, and I don't need to read it out loud in the space for time's sake, but basically Eliza, if she can give me permission to, just said that it's a huge tool in order to build relationships and connecting to folks that you might have not connected with before, and really just show the pure breadth of your community when it comes to arts and culture in a really cool way. So not only is it a tool for economic impact, it's a tool for relationship building and sustaining communities that are coming into these relationships. So, and then you can practice again with the QR code if you're still interested. This is from my hometown, a public art venue. So there's that. And then there's some BIPOC and Alana sort of considerations that we've come through this year, where we're looking to collect some surveys from that sort of organizational perspective. Now, these are flexible based on your demographic. So when Jocelyn comes to me and says, here's Utah's demographic, here's where we are, and I'm not sure I can get these 25%. I'm not sure I can get, for example, I'm using 800 again as an example. For example, I'm not sure I can get 200 surveys from these BIPOC events following these criteria listed here, where their guiding principles are rooted in communities of color, or their 50% attendees are BIPOC. We're not going to get there. And I'm going to say to Jocelyn, I'm going to be like, let me look, let's see, let's work it out, let's collaborate. And okay, then we're not going to get there, but we're going to move the needle, and we're going to shift our thinking from years prior. We're going to build community to see, oh, are there some, wait, I forgot about this person, or wait, I didn't even know that, those are the things that we're looking for. We're looking for the process of it all. And we're going to be transparent, and we're going to say, like, we're not going to get here, or we are going to get here, or here's how we get here. We're going to just be transparent with it, and we're going to help with providing resources. So that's sort of the BIPOC and Alana requirement. And these are just some questions that I can talk about at another time. So how is data processed? Well, the paper versions get mailed. They get regular mailed, USPS, Postal Service mailed to, I believe, maybe perhaps Jocelyn comes, picks them up, and then mails them to us. Okay. And then the QRL, I'm looking at Jocelyn, she's like, yes, I'm like, okay. The QR and the URL codes are going directly to our database. So as soon as somebody finishes that survey process, they'll go to our database. Lastly, or progress reports will be given regularly. And then at the end of the year, we'll have that data that we can use. And these are all the resources that we are providing. So there's me. Hey, I got a haircut, so this is cute. Then we also have this slide is old. We're at 387 people. Jocelyn has access to this cool thing called box.com that has a lot of information inside there. We're also going to be providing how-tos. So those videos they're going to be videos, one-sheeters for instruction, so that you have something that's tangible that you can hold on to or give out to folks to like let them know what's up, but not having to be there to kind of like walk them through it. Everything we're trying to do this time is like giving you a lot of the gifts of it all, so that you don't have to do all of the things, all of it. And then survey translations. The website's a really cool resource for you all to look at if you haven't already. Going to Americans for the Arts and finding AEP6 is a great resource. It has a lot of stuff on there. And then the AEP Toolkit, which has a community engagement guide, how to find these organizations, and then an awareness campaign that helps with the social media support, to Jocelyn's point. So here's what's in the partner toolkit. These are things that probably go too deep into our conversation here, but basically we will be providing Jocelyn with social media posts, graphics, emails, and I can share that if we're interested, but I can share that awareness campaign if we're interested. Jocelyn, let me know. I do have it up in another doc, but here's what happens. Here's how we start. Schedule the events, finding those events, identifying those organizations, and then go, 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 go. We're all together. We're doing this. This is my phone number at the bottom here if you need anything from me. But I think I would really, really appreciate if you reached out to Jocelyn first, because my phone is already blowing up with 387 partners. Jocelyn, you said you did want me to share the awareness campaign stuff or opening up for questions or?
Maybe we'll open up for questions. And I think I can always share the awareness campaign as maybe a follow-up, just to be mindful of people's time. I do want to thank you because I'm super impressed that you were able to get through all those slides in 30 minutes, because I've seen that presentation before and I know how long it takes. And so that's a skill that I'm very impressed by. So thank you so much, Genna, for providing those resources and just being our liaison through this process, because while I will, our team will take the lead on this, we're going to have bumps and questions along the way. So we're grateful for your support and your partnership. And so for those of you who are on the call, I know some of you joined late. So I did want to also just reiterate that for those of you who are maybe looking at this being like, this is overwhelming. Do I have to do 800 surveys? No. The Arts Council is our group, and I want to acknowledge my staff here. I know Genna was calling me out by name a lot, but our team, Emma, Andrea, Claire, Emily, and Thea, they're all on this call. We are making a commitment as an organization to do this work for all of you, to benefit arts and culture countywide, to be able to have this report that we can point back to, and talk to legislators and government leaders and say, arts and culture is worth the investment, and there is a direct ROI, and here it is. And so throughout this process, we will all be able to, answer questions. And, we've grown, the Arts Council has grown a lot, but we are also only 6 staff. There is a requirement, and I don't think Genna did say this number, but the minimum requirement, I think, Genna, correct me if I'm wrong, is to get 800 surveys. Did we lose her?
Yeah, that's what I have in my notes, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
I'm here.
You're here. And actually I redid the math, Genna, because you said 50 surveys at 32 events. And I was like, wait, I thought it was 16.
50 is 16. Yes, 50 is 16. I got them flipped.
Literally a piece of cake for Park City, Summit County. So, and even, we have the Latino Arts Festival coming up, and we have 10 micro events within that one event where we're going to be surveying as many people as possible. So I feel really confident. There's a ton of event practitioners here in the room. We also have people from the chamber here, people from the city, people from the county, who I'm really grateful that they're here, because it's just showing some buy-in at multiple levels of leadership here in Park City and Summit County. And so while we will be taking the lead, Genna did say, we are a small staff. And so our call to action to you all on this call and to these arts and culture nonprofits who do have events, we're going to be reaching out to you and say, hey, we would love to be at the Kimball Arts Festival and do some surveying, because that, to me, when I think of the Kimball Arts Festival, it has huge economic impact. We want to make sure we're capturing it. So one of the first steps of this is we're going to be reaching out to you and say, hey, can we infiltrate? And we'll bring some volunteers, or maybe you have some great volunteers or board members that want to get involved. Give them the surveys, give them the QR codes, give them the talking points that they need to be able to interact with people, and gather all of this data to help us reach our goal by the end of the year. So that's my one big call to action. And then 2 is to also be able to leverage some of your resources, volunteer forces. As a collective, we are a massive group of arts and culture people, enthusiasts, and I know you all have individual volunteers and board members who are all very passionate about making sure you guys are getting the support you need. This report will help us all get the support we need. So that's where I'm calling you all in and bringing you all in to get buy-in from you, to know that this report is extremely valuable and it's going to take all of us to get it done. And then we're also, I wanted you all here because it's important that we have a good understanding of what this is and why it's important. People are going to be out and about and doing these surveys, and we want our community to be kind to our surveyors. We want them to be willing to do this because they know that as a community member, this is also a benefit to them, because they'll continue to get these events. They'll continue to see all of our arts and culture nonprofits thrive because we have the support we need and the data to back it up. So I think we are going to end up doing a press release again, Genna has provided us with so many amazing resources, so we can really give some history and background to this study, and then do a big, again, call to action to our community members and say, hey, just know we're going to be asking you a lot of arts questions, spending questions, but it's important, and here's why. So we're going to do some storytelling very soon here in the next few months to make sure people are ready for this study. They know it and they know why it's important. So I guess that's my little spiel as the semi-leader of this. But again, I can't take credit for it. I mean, the researchers on AFTA's side are amazing. I can't tell you, I thought, Genna, when we first did this, I thought we were going to have to enter in all the data from those paper surveys. And I was like, who's going to do that? So the fact that I can mail those into you and say, this is your problem now, is fantastic. Really sorry about that, but that's great. So, I mean, their research team is super important, and being able to lean on that support from our state partner at Americans for the Arts is critical. So, okay, that's all I have. Genna, did that?
Jocelyn, Betsy has her hand raised.
Betsy, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I think from what I'm aware of, both Kimball's event and our event, we have our own economic impact report methodology, and we can't go against that because then all of a sudden we have a change and we can't control it. So is there a way that I'm speaking on behalf of Aldi, and I'm sure he's on this call, so I don't want to be wrong, but
he's not here, Betsy, but
yeah,
I am.
Yeah,
Go
I would say from Sundance's perspective, we can report out. Because we just have 300,000 people up here. It's crazy. We don't want to have a ton of surveyors other than ones that we bring in and we pay for that service. And it's a continuity of effect for the last 5-6 years. So is there a way that if we do our own survey and our own economic impact, we can overlay it into whatever you're picking up?
Sorry, I was muted. That's a really great question. I would pose that question to another member of my team that I can ask now. He's actually easy to get in touch with really quickly, because that's a good question. How do you, I think we've had this happen before on the research team where different communities have had simultaneously surveying folks at the same time, and we've been able to work that out. But I just want to make sure that I'm clear in what I'm asking is that the Kimball Center has an economic impact survey that they do themselves, that they've paid for surveyors for, and we're wondering how does that come together?
Well, Sundance more importantly, because that's what I run. So
Yeah,
Sundance, yeah,
those are
do our
probably
own
our
deal.
2 biggest arts and culture events here in Summit County. So I mean, Betsy, when you say that, like, I don't want to lose, like, our economic impact report will be incorrect if we do not survey people at your events.
But it's going to be the wrong survey. So we say, if you're from out of town, so we have 50-50%. We bring in $190 million worth of economic impact to the state. It is, my majority is coming from out of staters. So unless you ask, are you out of state? Are you in state? And then you go, how long have you been here? How many days are you here? All of that takes up, because we're an 11-day event. So, and if you pick up numbers that are different than what we report to the state, we're going to have a problem, and I can't have that. So all of those things sort of come into our presence, and we spent almost 6 months having the governor's office signing off on our economic impact buildup, and they've signed off on it, and it was not the easiest thing. So I don't want to have any conflict, but I don't also want to have a ton of surveyors of which we're not controlling. And that's a problem for us. So, I mean, we don't go on until next January. So by the time we do this, I'm sure we'll have it all sorted out, but I just bring it up that I know that's how we're going to be looking at this. And it's not to say we don't want to participate. We do. I actually think this is awesome, but we just can't have 2 different surveys for our event that don't come up to the same answer, and they're done differently.
One quick question on that. If there's not a way to sort of incorporate the data already being collected, because I know one issue there, Betsy, well, both Sundance and Kimball, you're collecting far more than 50 surveys, right? And Jenna mentioned,
thousands.
yeah, thousands, right? So Jenna, you mentioned that we don't want any more than 50 per
Mhm.
event because that's going to skew the data. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a way where we could carve out, one micro piece of Sundance or one, afternoon of Kimball Arts Festival and say, we're going to have AEP6 people. We're just going to, we don't need more than 50, right? So we're going to do like a small effort within those larger events and say, let's gather our 50. Also, we wouldn't be reporting on this was the impact within Sundance, right?
Mhm.
We'd be reporting on here's the aggregate of Summit County over the year. So no one would see, hey, the AEP6 study says the economic impact of Sundance is smaller or different than what Sundance is reporting, right? Because we're aggregating that as the whole.
I hate to argue, it'll be a red flag. Anybody
Okay.
that knows us, it will stand out like crazy. And 50 people, when we have 300,000 over 11 day, you're not going to pick up anything. So we can talk about it some more, but I just want to make sure that we're all doing this for the right reason, because I do believe that the aggregate is going to be really interesting. I just don't want to have somebody coming back and say, hey, for Summit County, we have, I'm going to make up a number, I don't even know, but economic impact to the state of Utah of $10 million. Well, then everybody will know Sundance wasn't in that number because we don't do that. And I would argue Kimball is the same way. I think they have a fairly large economic impact. So I just don't want to have the study that you guys are doing discredit it right away or off right away because our two organizations are driving a lot. And I'm sure there's other people on this call. So it's not just the two of us. I don't mean that. I'm just saying, I just know about us.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Betsy. And I think it's a really thoughtful and a really important issue that you've brought up. And I think it sounds like Jenna has some data experts that she's been working with on the back end, her team, Ben, and
Randy.
And Randy, who's actually done a webinar with us, and he's wonderful. So maybe we can go back to them and I don't know, because do you have an initial reaction to that, Jenna, or do you want to
Yeah, I think we're right. I think Jake was right on the same target that I was going to sort of also say. I did message Ben, and he said that it's really impossible to use the other survey instruments. So we could do it in reverse, where we could provide our survey to theirs, but we wouldn't be able to use their surveys to ours, which I think probably is really hard to do. But it's hard to, I mean, out of the 387 unique US communities that are part of this, the standardization is the key part to the methodology. So due to that, the sheer size and scope, that's why we do like that 50 per event, which then sort of aggregates across the nation to be a certain thing versus not just a part of Summit County.
That sounds great. I know we will talk about it more, but thanks.
Yeah. And I know I'm really grateful that Heather is here to represent the Kimball Arts Center and the Kimball Arts Festival. I was texting with Aldi this morning, who is the executive director of the Kimball Arts Center, who couldn't be here today. And he did express his support of this study. And so anyways, but it sounds like I'll do some one-on-ones with you guys who have these much bigger events with really massive economic impact and figure out a way where we're all feeling comfortable moving forward in the process together. Any other questions for the group on this study, on this year-long process that we are about to enter into? Are we that?
Sorry, this is.
I have a question, but I don't want to speak over somebody else. So if somebody else has one, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Sorry. So one of the things you just mentioned, Jocelyn, were the upcoming events, right? So we have, some big events or some events in the summer, obviously Sundance coming up in January. Presumably, since we have a while to collect the data, we'd be spreading this out over time, right? So it's not just like, hey, everything's happening in June, let's only collect data in June and we're done, right? Because we want to look at what happens throughout the year. So what's the plan for that, right? Some of us operate year round, some of us have ebbs and flows. I mean, how do you kind of strategically look at different points of the year to assess impact? So we're capturing that time when we're super busy, but also understanding that maybe some of our more diverse cultural events might happen in the off season, right? Where it's not such a huge economic driver necessarily, because things aren't as expensive, right? You're not going to spend as much money on your hotel room because it's not Sundance, right? So you're not spending $1,000 a night. It's now like 50. So, I mean, there's variances in being a tourist town that potentially would skew the data.
Yeah, no,
that's a great
it's a
question.
great question. Thanks, Katie. Maybe Jen, I'll take it real quick, and then if you have any additional feedback, that would be great. To be honest, we have not yet put a plan together. High level, I could think of 16 events off the top of my head: Save the Summit, Mountain Time Music concerts. I'm hoping Kimball Arts Festival and Sundance, but we'll see how that goes. But I also don't want to make those decisions in a silo. I want to be really inclusive in that process. And so we're going to kind of get together as an internal team to figure out what this process looks like, and maybe put together some type of advisory committee of people who might want to be involved in some of that decision making, made up of all of you. It could be an opt-in situation where we meet periodically, or even just meet once to decide, like, okay, these are the events that we really need to capture. Maybe people on the chamber are involved, maybe people sitting in the county are involved in that, so that we're really feeling like we have a diverse representation of different types of events. I want to make sure that we're spanning over multiple different disciplines: visual art, film, culinary, that sort of thing. But again, so we are in our infancy in this, honestly. And so I don't have a full answer for you, Katie, but I do want to be inclusive in that process. Would love to involve anyone who's interested in making those decisions, and at least this portion of it, where we're going to focus on the economic impact of events, and getting all of your input in that. Genna, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to say, that it's just a sampling, right? So that's why I was like, when Jack said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Y'all are right on target, where it's a sampling of sorts, right? And sort of, if we were to take a slice out of the Summit County, Utah life and arts and culture, this is what that would look like. So it's like a full year scope of like, this is what that full year looks like.
Genna, just a question. This is Connie Nelson from the Alfing and Ski Museum. We have a museum up at Utah Big Park that we had 476,000 visitors last year. 2 museums. I see on your website that the audience surveys for performances, events, exhibits, venues, and facilities. So we don't necessarily have an event each day, but we can have up to 1,000 to 2,000 people a day in the summer. And we do surveys, but we'd be willing to help out. But you're saying events, is this an event only survey?
No, ma'am. Yeah, yes. Give us some art, give us some museums, give us zoos, give us botanical gardens. We want all of art and culture in your region. And how do we do that as a museum is where it sometimes get a little bit, not tricky, but interesting. We've been asking, because we have that 50 cap, we've been saying, like, maybe pick your busiest weekend and do them during that weekend space so that we get the 50 from there, or pick a couple of different exhibits and target the exhibits different times of the year. So that's kind of like some of the strategy that we've used to support those sort of events. But yes, please. And I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to sort of ask the same thing, is that they can be sort of passively collected too. Like, it doesn't just have to be only those 16 events. It could be a few at 32.
100%. And I'll add that, Jocelyn said, did we confirm it's 800? Okay, good. Because I was like, that's usually what it is, but I didn't want to scare anybody if it was 400, because sometimes it's that too. What we have said is that once we get to 800, we're not going to be like, okay, no, we don't want any more of your surveys. We're going to be like, yes, bring more. So we won't necessarily cap you. We'll read every single survey that you send, or we'll process every single piece of data that you give us. But we cap things because we want some considerations of sort of a sample.
Thanks, guys. And Julia, if you don't mind, I know you have a question in the chat that I'm going to bring up. Julia Stout mentioned that, is this for nonprofits only? And this is an interesting question, because I know Julia is with Park City Song Summit, which is a event concert series that's coming up this fall. Am I right, Julia? And so, but you are not a 501c3, correct? You are.
We're not, but this is definitely something we'd be very interested in being involved with. But I'm just curious if it's for nonprofit events only.
It's a great question. I'm calling it nonprofit plus, because I think 501c3 is a good thing, especially when we come to that equity piece. Some folks fall under a different title, but still kind of operate in such. So we are including, and I don't want to pull back up that slide because that might be too much to do in this moment, but there is a long list of folks that we can include, like fiscally sponsored. We can include, I'm going to pull this up because it's easier for me to say rather than to show rather than to say. So anything municipally owned or operated, unincorporated programs, fiscally sponsored, things that are, like an arts program embedded inside of a faith-based center or a community center. Like I said, botanical garden, zoos, museums, historical, municipally owned. And then on this left side is sort of the legal term. On the right side gets a little bit more deeper diving into like disciplines that we can include as well. So that's a little bit of a deeper dive there, but that's generally how we do it. And because we're doing it through the lens of the nonprofit, and the reason behind is because public numbers and economic numbers that we can kind of like put dollars to dollar, it's coded. So these things can be coded and we can pull them up based on the tax coding that they file. So that's why the why behind the nonprofit status and how we have identified. So if you give me this from this organization, we'd be able to identify based on the tax coding that they provide.
But I guess when I look at this, Genna, again, so like for a for-profit concert series, which is essentially what Park City Song Summit is, although they benefit, like I know they raise funds for other nonprofits, and there may be some fiscal sponsorship, right, Julia, involved with your event. It is kind of like it's a for-profit concert series, so maybe it's not eligible. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you're serving, right? Or who you're serving and what event is it for, like, and who's getting the money at the end of the day. Because we've had circumstances where the venue was a for-profit venue, but an organization that was a nonprofit or nonprofit plus came in to do the event there, and we surveyed that audience because they were a part of the nonprofit plus audience. So it gets a little bit tricky, a little hairy. We can continue the conversation offline if you want, but it's like a perhaps. It's a perhaps. It depends on a couple of functions, especially when you have like a lot of parties involved. If there's a fiscally sponsored event, then maybe we just survey that singular act or that singular event rather than the whole series. So that's kind of the
that could be applicable for you guys, Julia. So anyways, I'll do some deeper diving maybe with Genna and her team and try to have an answer for you, Julia, about an appropriate way to maybe get you guys involved to see if that's eligible for data surveying. Jake, I know you had a question about.
Well, a couple of questions. First, the easy one on that point of what counts. What about things like a county fair, rodeo, farmers markets, those types of what we would consider cultural events, especially on the eastern side of our county? How do you define those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Somebody asked us about, I think Randy a couple of years back said that like rodeos weren't included, and that there was like an uproar because he thought it was like a sporting event, and they were like, no, this is our culture. So to that point, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you identify, we try to lean out from sporting events. I mentioned it, but we lean away from that sporting lens. But if it's deep in the culture of Summit County, then I think we should count it. I think we should. So that includes fairs, festivals, to your point, rodeos, that kind of stuff. Okay,
great. Go ahead, Justin.
We can probably, I know Kate McChesney's on this call and she helps run the Summit County Fair, but like maybe we do surveys at the art show of the county fair, so that there's a little bit more connection there, and it doesn't feel like we're only surveying people who are going directly to the rodeo. Because I do think it's important to make sure that we do surveying, in North and South Summit when we're doing this process as well.
I can totally help with that. I'm right here.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Kate. Sorry, Jake, I interrupted you.
So you're good. So the harder question I have, one of the issues we have in our community that I assume is shared with other communities is that because it's a tourism economy and one that's largely based on recreation, there's often sort of pushback or challenge that if we're counting all of these people as arts and culture impact, those same people might also be being counted as, say, recreation economic impact, right? So if somebody comes for a ski vacation, but they happen to go to a concert while they're here, and we count them as both arts and culture, but somebody else is also counting them as recreation, we're sort of double counting the same person, or in some cases we might be triple counting somebody, right? Depending on how the studies are being done. So have you dealt with that in the past, or do you have any recommendations in terms of how we message that? Right. So again, that point, somebody might come for a week-long ski vacation, but we might talk to them at the ski museum. Is it, how do we, I guess, justify counting their lodging and their meals, even though they came for skiing, they just happened to swing by a concert or swing by something else? Does that distinction make sense? And do you
Yeah,
have any
totally.
suggestions?
Totally. So in the actual audience survey, one of the questions is something like, and I'm going to butcher it, so my apologies. Something like, if this event wasn't happening, would you still be in the community? And so that yes or no will help kind of weed out what you're saying, Jake, or not necessarily weed out, but also give us that information, right? So that we know what we're counting, because we don't necessarily weed out in that way, because then they make it double, then both of the places made an impact. And so we're not gonna leave that out just because they came for this, but then also got this. That's a good thing. We're adding all of those dollars. So yeah, that's a hard question, but a good one.
That's a really helpful thing just for everybody to consider too, because we'll, I assume, have a data point that says maybe what percentage of people came just for these events versus came for other things. And I think we hear that point in an abstract sense a lot, but I don't know that anybody's really pinpointed and definitively said what percentage of people are coming for what. And so I think that'll be able to help us. We might find that it's a higher or lower percentage than we might expect that are coming directly for these cultural events.
Yeah. And that's important for us to know, right? Like, I feel like we've always been like, oh, we're not really sure, right? So. Okay, any other questions from the group? I think we're going to be able to keep this to an hour. So that's amazing, because I had originally thought this was going to be a 2-hour meeting. We chopped it down to an hour and a half. And honestly, if we can keep it to an hour, awesome. I'm going to do my best to really continue to funnel information to you all as it's relevant and pertinent to your involvement. And then I know I'm going to have some kind of specific follow-up with a couple of groups here. I'll make sure to connect with you all separately as appropriate. But yeah, any final questions? People are unsure about something. Okay, I'm hearing none. Please know, again, you all received an email from me to be here. So you all have my email. If you have questions that I can either answer for you, if I don't know, which is a very high possibility, I can always funnel that to Genna and her team. Again, this process starts soon. To Katie's point, we are going to want to capture some events coming up this summer. We all know we're kind of an event heavy industry in the summertime and wintertime, as we are very seasonal community. So we are going to start planning, as I mentioned, I think we're going to try to capture some data from the Latino Arts Festival, which is something that we're deeply involved with, obviously. So anyways, lots coming, and I will make sure you are all very clear on what you need to do and where I'm going to maybe seek some help from all of you. Yeah, and thank you to Dr. Genna Styles-Lyas for her time. I think this was meeting number 27 today for her, and she's graduating tonight and has anyway, so huge congrats to her. And I don't know, yeah, thank God for you, honestly, because this is a lot, and it's important. So I'm grateful for you and your time.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm grateful to be a part of this nationwide event, but also just this community in particular. I'm learning so much from every person I've talked to. And now I'm like, oh, we're going to go across the nation because I'm interested in learning. Like, I'm going to go check out the Kimball Center. Okay. Like, we're going to these places because it's so cool.
Yeah, no, we
So
have
really
we have an
excited.
incredible arts and culture sector here, and we're just all trying to come together and make sure we recognize ourselves as a true force, and you guys are going to help us do that. So
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm going to come and visit. I'm going to come see.
come out and see us for sure. It's a great place to be. Okay, well, everybody, we are at an hour, so thank you so much for your time. Again, this will be recorded. I'll make sure you have the recording, and I will be in touch with all of you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.